beloveds. We're delving into our next installment of the Future of Faith series. Today, it's titled The Sacrament of Interfaith Friendship. And we're being joined by the amazing Dr. Lynn Cooper, who is one of the top thought leaders to help us learn how to build meaningful connections across lines of difference and how to also tend to our own spirits and our own communities. And so I welcome Dr. Cooper to the screen. Thank you for joining us today. It is such a gift and an honor to be here with you. I know we have been talking a lot about the importance of interfaith, right? There's so many ways that interfaith relationships and cultivation and growing as we continue to move into the end of 2025, which January seemed like the whole year, and now it seemed like a day. But we're going to be talking about what is the future of interfaith relationships. And what I like so much, Lynn, is that how much you connect it to how it is soul nourishing for us. And so with that, I'm curious, how is your soul today?
Oh, thank you for this question. And thank you for just this opportunity to be with this beautiful, always growing internet community. I love this. And I think of it as a sacrament, which I can get to later. It's really incredible what technology can do for us these days. How is my soul? Well, it's feeling very full right now. Last night, it was also the Feast of All Souls, and we had a big celebration at our chapel honoring our beloved dead. And it just so happened that it was the day that I was able to align 6 people's schedules to have dinner together to honor my beloved friend and mentor of almost 30 years, who passed away this summer pretty unexpectedly. And so it took me till I was driving to the chapel where I realized, oh my gosh, this is a perfect day to be celebrating Peggy Hutaff, who is um, such someone who really kind of a midwife character or figure in so many of our lives. Um, Many of us who went into religious leadership or teaching or chaplaincy. And so I'm feeling uh, it was a late night, lots of stories.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
yes, Susie Hayward giving a shout out in the chat. Um, she really important mentor and saint. Yes, exactly. And so I'm still kind of holding that beauty and the power of sharing stories with one person who was her colleague, and I mentored her as a professor, and then students from many decades, and all of us eating Chinese food together, which was the one thing I wanted to do when I found out that she had died. Just that immediacy, I thought, I just want to go to the restaurant that she and I went to all the time and eat scallion pancakes with people I love.
Oh,
And we did, and it was
yes.
good. Yeah. So thank you
Oh,
for asking. That's where my soul is still,
yeah.
which feels like a blessing. Yeah.
That is definitely a blessing. And I'm sure we're going to get into this term a little bit later because I love that you talked about it as a midwife. She was a midwife
Mm,
of certain things. And I think very much this idea of cultivating interreligious, interfaith movements is a midwife experience, right?
mhm,
And so maybe
mhm.
we'll get into that later, but and thank you for sharing the story about how much this person meant to you. I think
Yeah.
oftentimes, and that there is the group on the chat who is sharing also that they're familiar with them and that they meant a lot to them as well. And so, we've talked about this. I know we talked about this last week that the shortest distance between two people
Mm,
is a story, right? So I
mhm.
imagine just the long hours and beautiful stories that were shared last night. What a
Yeah.
gift to be in that space.
Yeah.
Speaking of
Thank you.
stories, I'm super, super curious at like what brought you to writing Embracing Our Time, the sacrament of interfaith relationships and friendships and growth and
Mhm.
all of that? So yeah.
Sure. Well, thank you, Ellie. I I love a good origin story, and like so many, it could start many places. But my I had been a chaplain in a college setting at Tufts University for about 10 years. And I started to notice that I was just missing something. There was about the dynamics with my students, the struggles they were having. Um, and so I decided to go back to school and to kind of wrestle with these questions at the School of Theology at Boston University. And it was there speaking with classmates and everyone's, that this program is for people who've been in ministry for a while and are coming back with the hard questions. And so wrestling with that with my classmates and with professors, I realized I think I see like a vulnerability problem. People seem very disconnected. And I ended up focusing my writing on loneliness in higher education. And that really came out of seeing, the performative nature of how students were performing busyness, how they were, busyness as worthiness. If I'm not busy, I'm not doing it right. And with that comes so many the masks that we hold, right? And I was noticing that students were telling me things that they weren't telling their classmates. And these weren't like confidential stories or anything like that. These weren't like acute pastoral needs. These are just run of the mill life. You know, someone at home just got a diagnosis. You received a fellowship and you're excited about it, but you don't want to tell your friends. Like there was this theme of not wanting to burden one's friends, either with a joy or a sorrow. And I thought, what is happening here? I'm happy to receive this, but these are really the things that a friend would and should and probably would love to receive. And so as I did more reading and thinking about loneliness and the loneliness literature, this was before the pandemic, let me say. And I finished writing basically at the March 2020. And
Mm.
so it was it was really fruitful to have done that thinking and praying and researching on this issue that actually then of course now it's well known as a public health issue. And hopefully, I think the pandemic has helped reveal that it's not a personal failing, right? It's a systemic issue. Um, so as I was doing that work, I started to think about friendship. And, the Christian tradition has a long, rich history of valuing friendship in the desert mothers and fathers. It's kind of like this, it has more of a mentor vibe, but that's a huge part of it. There's certain orders, monastic orders, the Cistercians, they're really grounded in the friend. They go for these walks in silence together. Like it's just Jesus and his friends. I mean, one of the main reasons he was crucified was because of who his friends were. Like his friendship is deeply significant. And yet I feel like I had never heard that. Like, I had never heard someone really devote a lot of time to it. Some feminist theologians like Mary Hunt, but really kind of in the broad scheme of things. And then, of course, within the American culture, it's just not as valued as it should be. And I write about this in the book, but a dear friend of mine passed away in 2008 from an accidental overdose. And I mean, it was a tragedy. And he was a young person, um, but it was baffling to the people I worked with that I was as affected as I was. And these were like beautiful people who I love and I have relationships with still. But because he was not a family member or a significant other, they were like, okay, well, what time to move on now, and so that to me was very revealing about the lack of appreciation that our culture has for the intimacy of and intimacies of friendship. So when I had the opportunity, interfaith work, let me pause for a second and say interfaith work has been at the heart of my chaplaincy from the beginning. I work at on a multi-faith team with Jewish, Buddhist, humanist, Muslim, Protestant. I'm the Catholic chaplain. Um, and, so that's always been at the heart of everything. And
Mm.
when I was doing more reflecting on uh, where we are in this moment, especially with the pandemic, I knew that I eventually this was going to be an interfaith project. But in interfaith work, you have to start where you are in your own context and your particularity. And so when I started asking around to my fellow Catholic chaplains in higher ed, like, what's the book you use? You know, I want to be able to, you know, for me, it makes perfect sense that from my Catholic perspective, it deeply informs my draw to interfaith work. But I was trying to find the resource. And when you read some of the more like the encyclicals from Vatican II, well, Vatican II documents and then encyclicals, and they're beautiful, but they can be feel kind of out of reach, you know. But the church really does call us to interfaith work. And but I didn't even know that. It was a friend of mine who was in rabbinical school who told me about Nostra Aetate, which was totally embarrassing and also a gift. So I figured I need to really dive into my Catholic perspective and how it informs my interfaith work. Um, and so I'm asking around to friends, like, what's the resource you use? No one had one. And when I started doing the reading of the theological texts, they're
Mm.
they were so they were so boring. Like they were, I care about this. And they were so boring. It was so hard. Like, and I
Yeah.
just felt like I'm going to write something, and I'm going to write not the book, I'm going to write a book, like one entry point into this. And
Yeah.
so I wanted it to be grounded in stories because storytelling is a huge part of my life and my chaplaincy. But I really wanted it also to be grounded in the theologies that um, are kind of so baked into the experience of being Catholic and being Christian, being a Trinitarian Christian, that's like you take it for granted, you know, and whether that's the term sacrament, which I can come back to, but also the Trinity, you know, in Catholic circles, people are crossing themselves all the time, literally marking the Trinity on their bodies. I should use I statements. I'm literally marking my Trinity on my body. But am I really thinking about that? Like sometimes it's, you know, people do it like really fast.
Right.
But
Right.
I think part of this work is bringing a deeper awareness to that which is
Mm.
already there. And it's
Mm.
the deep reverence and beauty of the fact that the Trinity is difference. You know, the three persons of the Trinity are different. That's what makes them powerful and beautiful and work together. And when I really started praying on that and thinking and writing on that, I thought, well, that's it. That's the heart of interfaith work, interdependence and difference. And if it was all the same, there it just doesn't work. And then also just the dynamism. There's constant movement between the three persons of the Trinity. Um, and so it was really also mining my tradition in a way that was really generative and meaningful for me.
Mhm.
And really fun to get to magnify these parts of the tradition. It's like, this is already baked in. This is already like, let alone, you know, the actual official documents from the church that talk about the beauty of other religions and talk about the dialogical relationship. Um, but it's actually quite literally like we are embodied it's already we're already embodying this truth.
Yep.
So when I thought at first I was just going to write more about loneliness, and then I realized I was pretty tired of writing about loneliness. Also, writing can be lonely, and it was getting to be a little much. So I really wanted to reflect on the richness of what I've been able to experience in a multi-faith chaplaincy in a higher ed setting where, you know, everything is open to everybody
Mm.
as an educational opportunity, unless it's a specific affinity space for some, you know, a designated reason. Um,
Yeah.
and that I feel like is a great learning that we
Mm.
can share out into the world. Um, and the other thing I felt like there's so much emphasis sometimes on religious leaders and their role in this work, which is really important. But lay in my community, lay people are what, like 98% of the church, something ridiculous like that. So and we live in the pluralistic spaces. Like in the US, I'm thinking of people who are, you know, working at the food pantry and in libraries and volunteering with the PTO. These are pluralistic spaces. And so they're lay people are innately equipped and poised to be doing this relationship building right where they are, um, and not to have to wait for a clergy person to care or have time or capacity, because people are overburdened already and the
Mhm,
pastoral needs are so high. So it's
mhm,
often a very low priority. And especially with the acuity of the pandemic, I mean, a lot of interfaith um, work I know in Boston, it just took a back seat because there were so many more acute needs. Um, and now we're in an opportunity where we can kind of grow from that place. Um, so yeah, that's what the book came out of. And as I
yeah,
was writing, I realized, like, I think I've been writing this for a while.
mm.
That it's been kind of cooking in this way. Um, and yeah, I'd say that's the origin story. I'm sure I could go on, but I'll leave it there.
And I love that. I think because oftentimes, right? So, like in academia, right, we have that one moment in our life that changes us, and then we want to become that. Like, yeah, I had a teacher in high school, and my best friend in high school was diagnosed with a disability, and so I immediately knew I wanted to do something around special education at some point in time, right? So I was
Mhm.
motivated that way. And then I became like pigeonholed to a certain degree on what I was focused
Mm.
on, what I cared about. And so I often have taken myself out of that lived experience, right? And so living in the real world, when trying to build the bridges between religious institutions, academic institutions, and community, I remember that experience of I had become focused, that I had like taken myself out of the experience. And it seems that you did the opposite. You wrote about your experience, right?
Mm.
You recognize that this was something that you were living, you were questioning, you knew others were going through it as well. You
Mhm.
recognized, well, I need a book. I need somebody to talk to about this. I need what, and then when you found it missing, you stepped up. And I
Mm.
imagine that this isn't a book that isn't done writing, even though you think it's been writing itself the whole time. I
Yeah.
imagine you could probably go on and on and on about it. And from an interfaith, like when we think about interreligious or interfaith relationships, we automatically have to step back and take that broader view as opposed to that narrow view, right? That
Mm.
narrow perspective on something. And so I love that it's almost as if you have used your experience around interfaith chaplaincy to broaden the scope of what it might mean for us for you to be a midwife in this process of understanding how is it that we develop friendships, how is it that
Mm.
we move in and through loneliness, and then what does interfaith role look like for that. And I know
Mhm.
you have some like what you have some practical steps, right? So you created
Mm.
not only just a book, but you have a
Mhm.
companion piece to this as well,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about the companion piece and kind of why you thought that was important?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. And thank you for that share, Ellie. I appreciate that. I mean, I think a term that I've been using or to explain the point of the book is to be
Mm,
framing interfaith work as a spiritual priority. And I think
mm,
especially in this moment, that feels um, even truer, even realer. But I just wanted to take a moment just to mention that because I think that's a piece that's been missing, and that is something that I hope by drawing from all of these wells, these resource wells, that we can kind of embrace that as a calling. Um, yeah. So what Ellie is talking about is, so let me just hold up. So this is my book, Embracing Our Time, and you'll notice there's three little birds. I love the Holy Spirit and the
it's
Trinity. So we
beautiful.
have
Yes.
a lot going on there with that. Um, but Ellie is talking about a project that it actually grew from my doctoral work, I wanted to create a practical application for students to develop the skills of friendship and vulnerability, because we don't get to meaningful connection without being vulnerable. And that was a piece that I felt like I just saw that was missing in our students' lives. So this program, which is called Befriend, I have a little, we have stickers. We made stickers of them.
Yeah, we
So
have to.
Befriend, yeah, I mean, my friend Nora, my colleague, she made these, she makes sure we have, oh, great, you put it in the chat. So Befriend is an interfaith friendship program for students, faculty, and staff at Tufts University. And when we first ran it, it was fall of 2020. And, there were some people who were making deliberate moves to build more connection because it was just such a challenging time. And we had in the initial run over 60 participants, which was like I was not expecting. And I thought, oh, maybe as the pandemic wore on and eventually ended, thanks be to God, this kind of interest would peter out, and it really hasn't. And so the point of there's a couple different interfaith dimensions to it. One is that we pair participants together, students with undergrads, grads with grads, and then faculty staff with faculty and staff. And they are invited to choose if they want to be partnered with someone from their tradition or someone from a different tradition. They are also, so that's one entry point. So for many people, they want that comfort of someone from their own tradition. We also invite people to sign up with someone they want to get to know better. And so every participant agrees to spending an hour together with their partner for the whole semester. So it's per week. So it's like 9 meetings or so. And in that first meeting, they create a covenant together. And then that is part of their process during their time. And in the loneliness research, what we find is that consistent contact is what builds connection. Like that
Mm,
weekly connection, those touch points, it matters. It all is cumulative. And so during those hours, I send each week a spiritual practice that has been written by one of our chaplains. So these spiritual practices range from mindful eating to um, meditations on play and a challenge to do something just for the sake of it for no purpose at all, to reflecting on one's morning routine, reflecting on our humanist chaplain wrote we have kind of a greatest hits collection, and our humanist chaplain wrote a beautiful one about making coffee with his family in Puerto Rico, and how as a child, and what does it mean to be bringing that awareness and reflection on a ritual that connects you to ancestors and family, and also is something that you get to inhabit every day. So the
mm,
point of the practices is that they are really accessible. They build religious literacy because each chaplain is writing about why uh, this is speaking to them in some way. So our Muslim chaplain recently wrote one about recitation, and another one about tea.
yes.
And so, yes. So the point is that hopefully it will alleviate some social
Mm,
anxiety, because pairs can just follow the directions. Um, and then sometimes I hear from pairs who are like, "Oh, sorry, we're behind on 2 weeks because we just keep talking." And I think, yeah, like you're not behind at all. You're right where you need to be. Like it's this is about you using that time in an intentional way and building those connections. And so these practices are not required. we sometimes I call them invitations as opposed to practices, because we want people to know it's a scaffolding, it's not a formula. Um, but my hope is that through folks building those skills of active listening and showing up, I mean, getting your calendars out is like a holy act. I mean, that's a
Look,
spiritual practice in and of itself. Because,
yeah,
as with our budgets, like what you spend money on tells you what you value, right? It's like where you spend your time tells you what you value. And
yeah,
that's pretty rigorous
yeah,
spiritual life.
yeah,
um, and so that is the first act where they're really kind of coming to know one another. And I think too of my Jewish friends who keep Sabbath, there's like nothing casual about keeping Sabbath. It starts the week before,
yeah, yeah,
and so that is a great practical wisdom that I draw a lot of wisdom from, and a lot of inspiration, that, putting something in the calendar is a holy thing. And we need
yeah.
to do that, especially in this time of like, you know, I don't know, our students, their schedule, they look like Tetris screens. Like it's just, it's
Yeah,
madness. And so they really do. And I think we all do with our kind of different relationship to time, need to prioritize that. Um, the other
well,
piece,
Lynn,
yeah,
real
sorry,
quick,
go
if I
ahead.
can ask, so is
Hmm.
this like, do you pair us up with people? Like, if we buy this book
Hmm.
and this
Yeah.
workbook, is it something that we're bought into this virtual program and you pair us up with folks? Or do you invite local congregations, houses of worship, state councils, the ecumenical councils and
Hmm.
stuff like that to engage in this work and find their own partners?
Yes, great question. So I am not micromanaging this whatsoever. I'm here to accompany, um, but you know your context better than I ever will. So what works in our context might not work in your context. That said, these spiritual practices are so rich and compelling. I mean, I use them on retreats. I've used them with every incoming dental school student.
Mhm.
We do a spirituality and wellness workshop every year. We often use these practices there. They're very versatile. But yeah, I mean, the pairing piece is, again, a holy act. Like I block out a whole day and I do my best to honor every, people may have a gender preference for their friend. Some preferences, of course, we have to prioritize over
Mhm.
others.
Mhm.
And one other, and then I just have to trust in the spirit. Like, I to a point I agonize over it, and then I think I just have to remind myself that connection is mysterious and I believe in it, and not every pair is going to work out, but the vast majority do. And
Yeah.
I'm really proud of it, because I think what we've been able to do is also bridge the gaps even within our university. So we have 4 campuses. um, the veterinary school is in central Massachusetts. The dental school is in Boston's Chinatown. The art school is in the Fenway, and then the main
Mhm.
campus is just north of Cambridge. And so in Medford, Massachusetts. And last year, I was able to pair a librarian from the veterinary school with an admin from the dental school, because they wanted to meet virtually, right? So these are people who would have never met. And here they are spending 9 hours together, 10 hours together over the course of a semester. So things like that just feel um, like deep opportunities, and again, the sacramental nature of, even if it's just like a telephone call, or it doesn't have
Yeah.
to be Zoom. Like there are ways to um, use these powerful connectors in deeply generative and spiritual ways.
Yeah. Yeah. What does sacrament mean to you? How would you define
Mm.
sacrament?
Oh, well, I just taught our sacraments class yesterday.
Ah.
Um, this is students who are preparing for baptism, first communion, confirmation, and we meet for the whole year. So I like how you phrase it. What does it mean to you? Because there are these definitions out there, and I don't think they're helpful. It's like, it's a
As a
term.
UCC person, let me tell you, they're not helpful, the definitions.
Well, they're not helpful for me either. So,
Yeah, yeah.
um, within within the Catholic Church, there are these 7 sacraments that are rich, like the it's an event. It's an event, right? Like the baptism, confirmation, marriage. And but I think sometimes, and Eucharist, which is like the big one, that I think people can get so drawn into that, which is they're important. But actually, we are living in a sea of sacramentality. And so sitting here talking with you, Ellie, connecting with folks from, I'm looking at the chat, people from all over the place. That's an incredible gift.
Yeah.
And so when I actually did a independent study just on, of course, you could study sacramental theology like your whole life or whatever. But for one semester at BU, I just wanted to go deep. And, I had heard this word my whole life. And still, I'm like, what does this mean? And so a couple images really shook my world. And one of them is the doorway to the sacred. Joseph Martos writes that sacraments are the doorway to the sacred. Well, that's helpful. That's helpful in stretching the religious imagination beyond just these seven sacramental rites, which, by the way, all take place in a church, like in a sanctuary. But our lives, are far beyond the walls of churches.
Yeah.
So I feel really called to invite people to, again, like stretching our religious imaginations, our sacramental imaginations, so that we see God, the holy breaking in all day long. The writer Andre Dubus writes about how he has this beautiful essay on sacraments about how making his daughter's sandwiches for lunch is a sacrament. And that the love that goes into him, this daughter likes no mayo, this daughter likes mayo, like these choices that seem very mundane are actually an expression of deep care and love. And that if the love that goes into creating this sandwich is then that person consumes it, they are receiving that love. And so these are 2 images that really helped me better understand, as opposed to um, a sacrament is an outward sign of an invisible grace. Like, what does that mean? I don't know what that
Yeah.
means.
Yeah.
So, but these are deeply tangible and even mystical ways of thinking about this word. And so I use the word in the subtitle of my book because I really believe that friendship is a sacrament. It's the holy breaking through, and it's a doorway to the sacred, of feeling seen, of feeling affirmed, of being challenged and staying and being connected. And then, of course, across lines of difference, it's holy and beautiful and rupturous and similar but different ways. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. If you could real quick, and thank you for
Mhm.
that. And you somebody wants you to say again, you said
Oh.
scaffolding, not structure, framework, not
Mhm.
cement walls. Can you talk a little bit
Oh.
more about
Oh. Ooh, liminal
that?
spaces too. I like
I
what's
know,
going on in the
right?
chat.
Doorways equal liminal spaces. Yes.
Um, yeah, I mean, the scaffolding is a word I think of a lot and I use a lot because I think it's a way of offering support and structure, but it's not cement, right? It's something that actually is agile at
Yeah.
times and moves when it needs to move. So yeah, I find it a really like profitable word, like spiritually profitable word to be using in these moments. Yeah.
It's a good visual word as well because scaffolding invites, going to be a struggle, right? Scaffolding is not
Yeah.
it's a complicated, but allows things to move differently. I like the visual of that. We
Mhm.
talk a little bit, you talk a lot about it in your book, actually, and I think it will go to answer one of the questions that was in the Q&A, which is how do you engage conservative religious practices, maybe even Catholic practices as well. This person is a former Catholic, currently UCC, and does interfaith work in Central Ohio.
Oh,
So
nice.
does the work of storytelling, like,
Mm.
could could these two questions be tied together as, like, what is the role of storytelling or the role of stories in your interfaith
Mm.
work, and then how could we use that to help support this person's kind of like larger question
Yeah.
of,
Hold on. I'm just gonna write it down.
yeah, how
Um,
do we how do we use it to have those difficult conversations with interfaith with different,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, well, my mind's going in a couple different directions. I'm gonna put the stories to the side for a second and
Okay.
respond to this person's
Yep.
question.
Yep.
Um, and I think that over the years, my interfaith work has um, has helped me bring a more empathetic posture to
Mm,
my intra-faith tension. So,
mm,
like, and sometimes interfaith work is a lot more easy. It's easier and more convenient than intra. The kind of the differences are so great. There's less at stake, and it can kind of be safer. And I
yeah.
think that I know that personally, the skills I have developed in these other spaces, in these multi-faith spaces, interreligious spaces, have softened my edges in a way that I'm really grateful for because, I don't expect this book to speak to many Catholics who are find deep meaning in a more like um personal piety spirituality. Like I think that would be great. I'd love to have that conversation with someone, but I think it's so I guess I'm thinking about the internal landscape of what we can do internally to kind of, you know, embrace transformation. Um, but also I think that's where the storytelling comes in and the listening comes in because
Mm,
the active listening piece is just so key. Um, to see, I go to a church down the street sometimes. It's a very traditional Catholic parish. I probably don't have like a ton in common with a lot of the folks there. When I first went, um, I got really upset. It was a Holy Trinity Sunday, and let me just say there was no real celebration of the diversity of the Holy Spirit. It's just like I don't know how else to say it. There were so many priests, like six, and it just felt so painful to me. And so I'm really shocked that I actually consider this church one of my spiritual homes. But it's because of being able to see the deep beauty of the old folks who go to daily mass, who clearly have known each other for decades and decades. Like, um, they deeply care for one another. Like, I'm just in awe of the beauty of their religiosity and their practice and their faithfulness. Again, I probably don't have a lot in common, but it's been a deeply meaningful and experience of loving kindness, of extending loving kindness, of being changed by them, and really deeply inspired by their faith. They're so beautiful. These people are so beautiful. Um, but I will say, even in terms of, I'm thinking about our context at Tufts University. A bunch of years ago, there was some pushback with some of our religious student orgs who were kind of like, you know, communities that are much more are sent forth proselytize, or to evangelize in some way. And now we don't get that pushback because it's also been part of the expectation and the norm of like, if you're a officially recognized student, religious, or philosophical organization, you get to be part of the Interfaith Student Council. Like it's not a requirement. I mean, it is, but it's a gift. And now that I think has taught me a lot about how we frame things. The nuns also taught me that, the NUN nuns, about our posture matters. Like it changes the narrative when we offer something not as a site of threat, but as a site of deep gift and opportunity. And so the role of, so I don't have any like, I don't know who asked the question, maybe it was Catherine. I have no magic answer. I just believe in the process, and that for there are some folks for whom this is just not going to be interesting at all or relevant. And I respect that, even though for me, it's quite different. And it's like part of a global church.
Yeah.
There,
Yeah.
global church, there's a lot of diversity within.
Yes.
um,
Yes.
well, the stories piece, I think, is so powerful. I mean, there is, my work at the university in interfaith work is deeply grounded in storytelling. And part of this is, I'm from the storytelling world, and we always say, if you have a life, you have a story. And it's just a reminder that people are coming with deep wells of wisdom within them. And sometimes they might not even recognize that or realize that. I talk about this in the book, but I used to um, uh, help sign people up to tell stories at story slams. And there would always be someone who'd be like, oh, no, not me. I would never do that, get in front of a microphone. And not always, but very often that same person halfway through the show would come up and put their name in the hat, because something happens when we listen, when we hear other people's stories. It opens us up to having that, hospitality, a heart of hospitality, to receive someone else's story as the deep gift and living holy thing that it is. And sometimes students will say, oh, I can't be part of an interfaith group, like I'm not an expert on my tradition. To which, A, no one is. B, no one gets to be, no one has to be. Like, that's not the point. And then also it opens the doors for people from no religious background, or who have, you know, distanced themselves from the tradition of their childhoods. Like, we still want them at the table. Like, they have deep value to bring to this experience, non-religious, humanist, secular folks. And so framing all of this as storytelling reminds us all that we all have much to bring to the table. And so whether that is telling stories of, tell us a story of experiencing deep welcome, tell us a story of a recent experience of joy, tell a story about a time you experienced wonder. These are entry points. And when you meet every week together, sharing these stories, that intimacy builds, the vulnerability builds. And then, because always there's tension when there's that much diversity in a room, there's going to be different perspectives. You have that, again, that scaffolding. You have that sense of, I know these people, I trust them, even if I disagree with them profoundly about the war in Gaza, or, or something happening on campus locally. Like, all of these things, at least there's something to hold on to when things get hard, and they will.
Definitely. And I think that, and thank you for that. I really want the folks that are still on here to
Mhm.
be able to engage in an exercise as practice, right? Because we, like you said, we all come from very geographic diverse places, is what folks have shared on the chat. Some folks have shared what their background was or is now, but I would love to see if you could share an actual practice from your workbook that folks can answer and think about as we and put into chat if they feel so inclined, before I ask you our final question. So
Okay.
yeah,
Is
yeah,
this the letter?
this
Okay.
is.
Okay. So in the spirit of the Befriend program, I'm going to invite you to experiment with the spiritual practice of letter writing. And
Mm,
so maybe you're a letter writer, maybe you're not, maybe you used to be. I was a big letter writer for a long time. And then I just got out of practice for a while. And many years ago for Lent, I decided I'm going to write a letter every day. And some of those letters were to legislators, some were to friends, some were to family. And it was this kind of thing where I was kind of like, well, maybe it'll get me, I don't know, back in the game. But it just turned into this totally different experience of feeling deeply connected. And even if I didn't hear back from some of those folks, it didn't matter. It didn't matter.
mm,
I mean, in the same way of like when you write a letter and you don't send it, or if you write a letter to someone who's deceased, but you still have that experience of feeling that deep connection. And so we're going to take a few minutes. I invite you to get something to scribble with in some capacity and call to mind someone you either want to reconnect with, someone who's living or deceased. And take a few minutes, share what's on your heart. Um, Maybe something has reminded you of them lately, um, or maybe you just want to share about your day.
mm.
But bringing that loving kindness, that intentionality, and we're carving out the time for you, so you don't have to do it later. You can do it right now.
Love that. So as they're doing that, I would love
Mhm.
to ask you, what do you think are the needs of this moment?
Mm,
Why? Because you shared that you wrote this book, you finished it March of 2020. Some things have stayed the same, some things
mm,
have gone
mm,
back to what they were, and so
mhm,
much though is new. So what do you
mhm.
think the needs are for us at this moment?
Oh, great.
And for real quick before you answer that, everybody write in chat who it is that you chose to write a letter to or you're thinking about writing a letter
Yeah.
to. Yeah, go
Or you
ahead.
can write one after we
Or write
after
one
we
after.
close.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's an invitation.
Yes.
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
Suze.
Mhm.
Um, well, just to clarify, my book came out actually just a couple months ago, but that writing on loneliness was yeah, timed in 2020.
Yep.
Oh, the needs of I mean, the needs are always so great. They're always greater than anything we could fathom or measure or attend to. What I'm seeing in my community, there's needs of first solidarity, for knowing that there are such vastly different experiences of risk and exposure right now, depending on people's identities or citizenship status. So I see that as a profound need. Um, and I mean, I always think there's a deep need for connection. What is happening with this presidential administration, um, and feeling the very real um, desire to overwhelm, to um, there's a power to comparing notes. There's I mean, solidarity is salvific, and I think the more we can keep that connective tissue and nourish it and be um, uh, supporters of one another, learning from one another, that's going to be, I think that's a huge need in this moment. Um, and can I offer something that is
Yes.
giving me giving me hope right now? Shout out to one of the people in the chat here, Reverend Susie Hayward, who has a new podcast called American Unexceptionalism, and Ellie is nodding
I
vigorously.
totally binged it this weekend. So
Yeah.
yes. Susie,
um,
reach out. Love to have you on. Yes.
yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, Susie drawing from her very seasoned career in working with the U.S. Institute for Peace in Myanmar and Sri Lanka, doing peacekeeping work on the ground. And the, she and her podcast co-host Matt Turner, make it very real. It's like this is not new. Like what we are experiencing in the United States is not new, and we have so much to learn from people across the world who have been doing this for a long time. And I have found such hope in the work that this, these listens, these podcast listens, but also the fact that there's this whole community of thinkers, of scholars, of activists, of theologians who are just doing this deeply gritty, generative mining of the wisdom of I guess I shouldn't say mining, but magnifying of the wisdom of people who have been here before and have so much to teach us. And so I feel like hope sometimes seems like, like gratitude, like this like fluffy practice. And like gratitude is not a fluffy practice. Like it is gritty, it is hard. Brother David Steindl-Ras, the Benedictine monk, he always says, and he's devoted his life to um, contemplating gratefulness and writing about it. And, he was a child in Nazi occupied Austria, like he is also coming from a place of profound experience of trauma and violence and authoritarianism. And he says, we can't be grateful for everything. That, you can be grateful for war or famine or, suffering, but you can be grateful in every moment. And that's the difference. And so when I think of the gritty practice of hope, it feels very similar to me, that eschatological hope, the long view hope, the hope that I experience when I read the Psalms and I realize, oh yeah, nothing I'm experiencing is new. Nothing.
Nothing,
That's a deep
nothing.
source of comfort for me,
Yeah.
of like, we're part of something so much larger. And yeah, the long view.
In
Mhm.
the long view. Oh, I love that. And I love everybody who's taken time to write in
Yeah,
the
thank
side
you.
in the chat. What a gift that is. And I want
Mm,
to thank each and every one of you for joining us today. I want to thank our tech team for making this
mm,
possible, for checking in on their days off to make sure everybody knew about the webinar. And Lynn, I just
mm.
have thank you for saying yes to the random cold call email of, hey, I've read about you. I want to meet you. Can I spend some time interviewing you and then sharing your gifts with the wider UCC
Mm,
community? It has been a gift and a pleasure. I know that with some friends of mine that do some work around the ecumenical councils and stuff have been talking about what it is to do and to delve into this book a little bit deeper, to see if
mm,
we can't bridge some divides and share some similarities in our work. And
mhm.
so I look forward to reporting back to you about how that goes.
Okay.
And
Mhm.
you're welcome to just anytime you come out to the Southwest, be happy to show you and your loved ones around and take care
Thank
of you,
you.
because you have just been such a gift. The
Mm,
opportunity, I wrote down midwife, sacrament, masks, the busyness of our lives, our
mm,
meaning, or how we make meaning of our time, you know, um, loneliness, intimacy of relationships, in particular of our friendships, solidarity, covenant, active listening, doorway to the sacred.
mm.
I have so many more notes that I could read, and I'm just grateful for you. So thank you for joining us. And for all of you who are interested, we're back for our regularly scheduled Nurture the Soul on Thursday for part one of a three-part series exploring land. This three-part series is exploring how our relationship to land varies, not just geographically, but spiritually as well. We're going to examine the role of Christianity and what it has had in our relationship to land, and then how that informs how we worship, how we live, and how we work alongside others. Part one is special. I'm really excited for this one. we're going to be hearing from a particular demographic. It's a handful of churches within the United Church of Christ identify as ethnically Armenian. So we're going to hear from an Armenian UCC pastor about their Christian treasures that can be found in the lands of Armenia. We're also going to be learning about the hope-giving ways that a nonprofit organization has come in to be able to help support the work of the Armenians who were caught up in war in 2020. So we hope that you join us from a Christian perspective, but from a geographically diverse land. And it's an opportunity for us to maybe even put some of our interfaith relationship practices into practice for sure. And so, Lynn, thank you so much again. And for all of you joining us, know you'll have a follow-up email with the resources, but I turn it over to you for our benediction.
Oh, thank you, Ellie. And as I just put in the chat, it's really so what a gift to see the names. Thank you, especially in these early days of November, where that feels so, yeah, these are mystical times, you know, where that proximity is even richer, and that connectedness even more discernible. So thank you. And thank you, Ellie, for this beautiful invitation. It's really incredible to see. I love seeing internet communities and faith communities, and I love it's profound. So thank you for the good work you're doing and for this really gracious invitation. I feel really blessed to be part of this this series.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm tasked with sending us out with a little benediction. So I'm going to do a little bit of what I do on Sunday nights in our chapel, which is just to invite, you know, I'm going to close my eyes. You do whatever you need to do to feel grounded and to take a few deep breaths, to center the spirit, settle the spirit. Reminding ourselves that we're always in God's presence. As you breathe in, pause, breathe out, pause. Bringing awareness to that invitation to rest, residing in every breath we take throughout the day. As you breathe in, pause, breathe out, pause. My friends, may God bless you and keep you. May the light of God's face shine upon you. May your life be full of peace and joy. And may you always know you are loved. Amen.
Siblings in Christ, if you are moved by this conversation, if what's been offered here has helped enhance your ministry or has nurtured your soul for the journey, please consider donating to the annual fund of the United Church of Christ by texting UCC to 41444. Your support will help to provide programs like this, which are an essential part of our ministries in the United Church of Christ. Thank you for your support. Be blessed on your journey and know that you are not alone. We are holding you in prayer. Amen.